Why is Trump organizing the most expensive parade? How much the protests are shaking the US, and how the conflict between Israel and Iran will affect the United States and the Russian-Ukrainian war? This and other topics we will discuss right now. My name is Irina Uzlova, and today with us is Yuri Rashkin, TV host of YouTube channel RashkinReport and RashkinReport in English. Yuri, hello, glad to see you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Irina.
Always glad to see you. Trump turns 79. What would you like to wish him?
I would like to wish him well, far, far away from all of us, in some very secure location, probably so secure that there are bars on windows, so that he cannot get out and cause more damage, because he is right now what you're showing and the parade is the expectations that we're having. I understand that they're putting out an ad on Craigslist, which is, wanted ads all over the place for free, basically, saying that they're looking for people who want to participate in the parade and stand along the parade's path, because nobody wants to take part and be a witness to this parade on one hand. And on the other hand, we see military leaders who are very concerned about a Tiananmen Square kind of a moment where a resident of Washington, D.C. could easily come out in front of a tank and stand there with grocery bags. And then what? And so this is an unpopular president conducting an unpopular exercise, which vast majority of Americans do not approve spending money for this. The last time we saw a military parade was in 1991, when U.S. won the first Gulf War. And would like to remind President Trump that even that parade did not keep George Bush Sr. from losing. So in the following year, in the next election. So parades by themselves don't do what Mr. Trump thinks they might do. But then maybe he's not looking at them by election standards and by dictatorial standards, in which case his parade is expected to be sad and pathetic, because he's expected to have rain, thunderstorms, flash flood warnings have been issued for Washington, D.C. So I guess we're going to see how our brave men and women in uniform go against weather. So sometimes God has an opinion of her own. And I think that this is an important milestone, of course, for the United States, among several this year, when the United States voted with North Korea in United Nations, or when President Trump kicked out President Zelensky out of the White House, or a couple of days ago when Secretary of State Marco Rubio expressed his support for Russian people on their fake holiday, because this is, we see where apparently which country United States and this administration values. And it's not really America, it's not Ukraine, it's not any of our allies, it's Russia. It's the country that doesn't have any tariffs, the country that our president wants to have good relations with, and the one that our president is planning to develop lots of business projects with. Incidentally, what is Russia's business? War. So how are we going to be continuing and working and helping that whole thing? Not good. Bunch of not good stuff. So we'll see where the parade goes. And really, most people are going to go and protest. And it's not going to be some violent mob. It's going to be 800 plus cities in the United States that are going to be holding a peaceful protest. I'm going to one here in Milwaukee. I'm planning on taking this flag with me, which is hanging upside down to show that we're in trouble. But the one that I bought in Kiev when I went to visit there this past August, because I believe in the friendship of American Ukrainian people. And I think that this is going to be the kind of protest that, like my friends we're looking for a wheelchair for an 80-year-old person who wants to be at this protest here in Milwaukee. And he had a sign made for protest where on one side it's no kings, and on the other hand, on the other back, it's just a horse's ass. I mean, because Trump, T-Rump, and what goes in the back? Horse's ass. And so that's his way of expressing himself. That's America. Why we need to have Navy SEALs, considering that to be a threat. I mean, one would have to be a real coward to be threatened by that. So I think that this is another experience for the United States that is, now going to a protest might become more of a stance, a statement versus just a way to express yourself in a political sense about anything. Protest, it's so American. But now we have a president who considers a protest to be a threat. Well, maybe that's why there is a protest for no kings, because it doesn't have to be complicated. There are countries that have kings, but America, we don't. And we are not up for that. We don't like this idea. This narrative does not fit with America. We got rid of a king and we're not about to have a king again. And if there's somebody who thinks that he's qualified or he wants to, he's going to experience consequences of that bad decision.
But if we conclude that Trump is similar to Putin in such cases like this parade and his dreams about unlimited power, I think will Trump hear and accept all those signals that will be at this protest, really peaceful protest, even not in Washington, so as not to provoke Trump?
Right. There's not planning to be a protest in Washington, but there's a lot of people who feel very passionate in Washington, D.C. So I think it's, in the end, it's impossible to predict what's going to happen. But there isn't one protest planned in D.C. because, well, streets are going to be occupied by tanks. And then they're planning on spending, I think, millions, over $10 million repairing streets in Washington, D.C., because that's not what those streets are designed for. People are not going to put up with it, I described. And what Trump is going to do about it, it's going to make him angrier. It's going to make him hate American people even more than he does now. And it's going to make him dislike America in all that it stands for, law and order and constitution and justice, even more. Peaceful protest, freedom of expression. If you disagree with Trump, then that's just fake news. That's not really freedom. Freedom is to be free for Trump. And everything else is going to be, so this does it sound like Russia? Well, yeah, but in English. And I think that's an important distinction because Russia is not as well organized. And America is a much more functional country, but on operational level. But at the same time, we're looking at a president who's trying to destroy the country at the same time as he's trying to use the strength of the government to punish his enemies. So it's kind of like he's destroying it as it is punishing. So how is this going to play out and what consequences it will lead to? And we know that violent protests where people died in early 1970s at the American universities, including Kent State, played a crucial role in getting United States to change its course of policy. But even Richard Nixon was not Donald Trump. And I think that we shouldn't fool ourselves simply because Nixon was an experienced politician. And Trump is just an experienced salesman who, except for being a wannabe dictator, never held another position or owner of a family business that filed bankruptcy 6 times. He's never had to do work for anybody in a capacity of even a U.S. senator or a governor. He just wants to be in charge and show everybody how it works. Well, he doesn't know how it works. And people that voted for him, I feel like in this country, we made one big mistake, and that is we needed to give higher education out free to people. We made this into this thing that you have to pay lots of money to get higher ed because without a college degree, you're nobody. And it turned out that people without college degrees vote for Trump way too many times. And so we really should be focusing on developing people's critical thinking skills because something happens in college where people start asking questions. And it just doesn't seem to occur in other ways. And when we see at Trump's base, we see that the less educated people are, the more likely they are to vote for Trump in general. It's important to notice this. And also it's important to note that 60% of Americans do not support Trump's policy towards Ukraine. And yet he continues very aggressively and actively to promote Putin's narrative in the United States in every possible way, including Tulsi Gabbard strain strange video about her trip to Hiroshima, where she's projecting Kremlin narratives about the threats of the nuclear holocaust because, what does it mean? If this is the worst thing, let's agree and make peace with Russians because they have so many weapons. They can destroy. And for some reason in the video, she mentions that those who think that they can survive in a bunker are wrong. That seems like really a strange appeal to Vladimir Putin to come to negotiation table because apparently even a nuclear device can cause even a bunker where Putin seems to be living in danger. So they're all over the place, but they're promoting Russian narratives and Kremlin narratives. And we have Secretary of Defense who seems to be very willing to do president's bidding because without president, he's nobody. Well, he was nobody before president, and he is even less now because he's committed so many things that could be investigated for potentially being crimes. That without Trump, he wouldn't have a job without Trump. So he's very much owes his position in life to Donald Trump, and he knows it. He understands it. It's just kind of a mixed bag because he doesn't seem to be very smart. And that seems to be a plus for us and minus for us, and we have to deal with the consequences. But he could lose his job even in this administration because they can't seem to find anybody willing to work for Secretary Hegseth. And that's kind of a bad sign because if you can't find anybody to work for them, maybe you should change the secretary. That seems like the outcome that jumps at mind. But Hegseth is not concerned about using troops against Americans. He doesn't have a problem putting Navy SEALs on American streets, even though that seems to be abhorrent to a vast majority of Americans. So we have an administration who is fearless about using the power of American state against American citizens. If this isn't a representation of Russian state power kind of manifesting itself through White House and through this administration, then I would like to know how it will be different if we did have Kremlin's person, man, woman, whatever, them in the White House. Because this policy of setting up protests by grabbing immigrants off the street in plain sight and basically daring people to do something about it. And you know what? You're going to get reaction in this country for sure, because, well, we've been trained on standing up to Nazis. This is the question that comes up now over and over. Like, what would you do? You wonder what you would have done in 1930s Germany? That's what you're doing today. And there's people who are very upset about people being kidnapped off the streets by our immigration police. And that is designed practically or inevitably leads to protests all over. And it's just another reminder to anybody who ever thought to vote for Trump is that if you want disorder, if you want mobs on the streets, if you want businesses destroyed because protests are inevitably followed by those that are going to cause damage and should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, and yet they're going to be there. And Trump is going to be using that and all of that responsibility. He's the president. No, of course, it's the fault of the American people because, they're protesting against perfectly legal policy. It's also a responsibility of Stephen Miller because we have a person who is absolutely filled with so much hatred that when a news reporter announces in a tweet, as Terry Moran did, formerly of ABC News, that Stephen Miller is a world-class hater, he's fired basically from ABC News because so much pressure is put immediately, clearly, by the White House. Stephen Miller, de facto president or vice president or something, prime minister of the United States, who is manifesting his hatred at others through everything that he does. It didn't stop him, though, from losing his wife to Elon Musk, but, maybe that, I don't think that would made him, it probably just made him angrier. So there we have this administration who is willing to do what it can do, and it dares people and courts to stop it. We see courts that are doing a pretty good job of stopping it, but it's a temporary defense. We need elections. We need new politicians who are able to stand up to this kind of aggression and this level of really determined animosity towards America that we have in America. And when we saw what happened to Senator Padilla, who was pushed down because he dare to ask a question during a press conference by Secretary Kristi Noem, and he was pushed down, and then President Trump said that he looked like an illegal. This is just trying to cause problems. But of course, there's lots of people who think that Trump is just so dumb that he can't see it any other way. He's just the king of bad decisions. If you can say something stupid, he will find a way. But that doesn't make things better.
Yes, it's a pity, but it's really a fact. Yuri, how do you think? Because we think that Putin is scared of Israel's special operation against Iran, a possible fall of the regime in Iran, and Putin's last hopes may be only for Trump now. But Trump supports this operation after its beginning, because earlier we saw all failed different attempts by special envoy of Donald Trump, Steve Witkoff, yes, in this question and problem on Middle East. No results at all, and we understand why, because no magic of deals, no art of deal. But now we see that Israel makes a strong, effective operation, and Trump supports it, or maybe no. How can you assess Trump's reaction, Putin's reaction, and the future of this operation and the United States' role in it?
Irina, I am just so continuously amazed by the vast amount of knowledge that you have. And it probably comes from spending an endless amount of time in front of camera working with reasonably smart people, reasonably well-informed people. You are really the smart person here. I'm just trying to fill in the gaps. But nonetheless, I think that what we saw with Israel and Iran, and what we're continuing to observe with Israel and Iran, is a show of strength. And a show of strength is something that is very appealing to Donald Trump. This is why even when Ukraine had its masterful spiderweb attack on Russia, even though Donald Trump does not want to see Russia hurt because it will ruin his good relations with Vladimir Putin, he still admired the strength, that the brute strength of attack that was totally unexpected and was so devastating for Russian strategic aviation was impressive. And here we're seeing it over and over and over, because Israel has had decades of intelligence work and seems to absolutely dominate Iranian defense system, space, knowledge of just intelligence, knowing where to hit. The list of people, the top of Iran chain of command that have been eliminated is so impressive, because it's just it's such a short amount of time, and really by planes. We don't have people who are individually going around with lists. This is planes. This is just really masterful work of intelligence that is just Israel is showing that when it comes to executing these kinds of strength, they're almost like cats playing with mice. And it almost feels like, are they doing this because they really need it? Because if they're cats with mice, are these mice as dangerous as this cat is trying to portray them to be? Because it seems to have no problem taking care of it? Or is there perhaps a political reason for this attack in the first place? Because we know that President Trump was trying to talk Bibi Netanyahu out of this as much as he could, but then it sounds like there was a vote in Knesset that did not go Bibi's way, and so the next day Israel launched these masterful attacks on Iran, causing all sorts of damage and devastation that we see in front of us. Now, maybe those two things are entirely not connected, or maybe Netanyahu is willing to do anything to stay in power. And of course, my heart goes out to every Israeli who has to spend a second in a bomb shelter because of attack from Iran, or because of the decisions of its political leadership. But Iran, as a weak state, is not likely to be able to do to Israel what it can't do to Israel, what Israel right now is so effectively doing to Iran. But what do weak states do? They support terror. And so that means that more than likely Jewish people all over the world are now going to be in greater jeopardy, in greater danger because of these actions, because of this very powerful military operation. Now, does it mean that no good decision should be done? No, but I just hope that those considerations were also taken into consideration, because those reasons, because it's a dangerous world that is being made more dangerous. Now, did Putin Putin like this? Did Trump like this? That's a good question, because it seems like they didn't. Because even though, yes, brute strength is good, but then Donald Trump comes to his senses and goes, well, peace and negotiations, and Vladimir Putin is not happy. But of course, he also has to take credit. He doesn't seem to mind. He kind of takes it naturally to taking credit, except it might make him look kind of suspicious, because if he claims credit for this whole operation by Israel, then does that mean that his whole negotiation with Iran was fake? And therefore, what is the point for Iran to continue further negotiations with this like a setup? And so there's just the sorts of things that are really hurting his own policies if he thinks outside of like a very short time window or just a one or two steps. Perhaps this is, I understand Garry Kasparov's struggles, because as a chess master, he can see so many moves ahead. And when you look at Donald Trump, I think one or two moves ahead is kind of his main thing. And it's got to be frustrating for a master to watch.
Yuri, and we have 2 minutes. Will Donald Trump join European sanctions, 18th package, for example? Very good chance for him to show real power and strength.
He wants to have Donald Trump, his paramount priority is to have good relations with Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin would not like these sanctions. So therefore, this is not a good thing. Vladimir Putin is not happy with Iran being attacked, because Iran is now claiming to be basically a client of Russia. So this is something that Donald Trump now has to clean up for his master. And so I think sanctions is just going to be another opportunity for Trump to delay, and at the same time, keep some sanctions in place, because otherwise Putin would just never call him again, it seems.
Thank you very much, dear Yuri, for this conversation from our today's dialogue. See you next week. Take care, please.
Take care.
Yuri Rashkin, TV host of YouTube channel Rashkin Report and Rashkin Report in English. My name is Irina Uzlova. Guys, thank you for joining and watching us. See you.